Our next inductee is Darren John Lipomi, PhD, class of 2001. Dr. Darren Lipomi is assistant professor at the University of California, San Diego, Department of Nanoengineering. After graduating Hilton High School, he went on to earn a BA in chemistry from Boston University, where he graduated summa cum laude. From there, Dr. Lipomi earned a PhD in chemistry from Harvard University under an American Chemical Society graduate fellowship. He has also earned a business certificate and done postdoctoral work at Stanford University. Dr. Lipomi is a leading innovator in lifelike electronic material for solar energy harvesting, as well as wearable and implantable health monitors. His work aims to create a new class of semiconducting polymers that have properties inspired by biological tissue, extreme elasticity, biodegradability, the ability to self-heal, and sensitivity to a range of chemical, biological, mechanical, and optimal signals. That was a mouthful. At the age of 33, Dr. Lipomi has authored 52 peer-reviewed publications, is an inventor of 5 patents, and has garnered $3.2 million in federal research funding, including a $2.2 million grant from the National Institutes of Health. Please join me in congratulating Dr. John Lipomi, class of 2001.
Thank you so much for coming on such a beautiful afternoon. It's really a great day to be back at Hilton High School. I think the last time I was on this stage speaking, I was Secretary General of the Model UN, and I remember giving a bunch of nervous handshakes to awardees from around New York State that won Best Delegate from this or that committee. So I'd like to thank also the committee, Aggie, for the generous nomination. It's a real honor to share this stage with Ruth and Kyle also. It was a really touching speech. I wrote my speech. Scientists don't normally write down what they're going to say. They follow PowerPoint and they point to it with a shaky laser pointer. So I wrote this speech on the plane, and it was the most turbulent flight I've ever experienced. So I'm going to screw up a lot because there are smears on the page from what must have been 20-foot undulations in the altitude of the plane, in like 100 milliseconds, which caused a lot of people to scream. So, so to the students in the audience, and I know there aren't too many, but there are a few. I thought I would try to give some words of advice or encouragement, and a lot of people try to give you advice, but much of the time what you'll find is that they tell you to do what they did to sort of justify their life choices. And some other people might tell you to follow a passion, but a passion is a very difficult thing to define, and it's the word passion's thrown around in a little bit of a trite way. When you look at the biographies of people who have accomplished a lot of things, you find that what they followed was not necessarily passion, but opportunity. Passion, knowledge, and ability are the tools that allow one to take advantage of opportunities. So when I was a student at Hilton High School, my passion told me to become a trombone player in an orchestra. And I think the two most influential aspects of my education at Hilton High School were music and chemistry. So I see Mr. Stott in the audience. I had a great, is Nancy here too? I had a great opportunity to sit in on one of Ms. Russo's lessons, and also to sit in on AP and IB chemistry. So what ended up happening was I had applied for music schools, and I enjoyed music so much, but I think I had a slightly inflated opinion of my ability. So, you know, I could get an all-county chair, an area all-state chair, but when you really try to perform at the highest level in any field, people will come out of the woodwork who are just insanely good. And one of those people actually was from Monroe County, who was, in a way, a competitor, and his name is Ward Stair, who's currently the director of the RPO. Honestly, you probably didn't even know who I was at the time, but I definitely knew who he was. So when I failed to get into Eastman or Northwestern for music, I was heartbroken. I decided to take a chance on Boston University. It's a place that I had never visited, but they did give me the most financial aid. So I chose a major of biomedical engineering for an equally evolved reason, and that is that it had the most syllables. A week after I arrived at BU, 9/11 happened, and it changed my outlook on everything forever, as it did with most of the people in this room. I no longer cared about technology, and I switched my major to anthropology so that I could try to understand the reasons why people act the way they do. But during my freshman year at BU, I had a great experience in Chemistry 101 and 102, which rekindled my interest in atoms and molecules that I developed because of the charisma and knowledge of Mr. Tom Dowd, who I had in 10th grade and 11th grade for chemistry and AP chemistry. I then changed my major for the last time to chemistry. I joined a research group, and I published 2 first author papers as an undergraduate, which got me into the PhD program at Harvard. And I should say that my experience in band, and I was in every band, that was the one place where I really had to develop my sense of motivation outside the classroom to study, because math and science courses, I loved them, and I found that with 5 classes per week or 4 classes per week, I could just kind of get it, and I could do enough of the homework to do well enough on the exams. With music, if you showed up to a lesson and you hadn't practiced, it's immediate. The effect is immediate. So I took the disappointment in Mr. Stodd's face was immediate. So I took that. I took the instruction in music, and while I was not playing much music in college, it is why I was able to study and get A's and get write papers. So at this point, I was a graduate student at Harvard, and this isn't written on my list. It just is kind of a funny anecdote. In between my undergraduate and graduate careers, I stayed in the lab where I did research because I didn't have a summer job, and that was a huge mistake. I should have gone traveling the world, you know, on a shoestring budget or something. But instead, I just burned myself out. And the reason I did that, it's funny the way this wasn't passion. This was just something that happened that had a profound effect on my later choices. I had a roommate and a studio apartment. I had already graduated. This kid was still a student at BU, and he would play a video game called Counter-Strike until 4 a.m. Every single night. And I was so annoyed by this that I took my computer and all of my stuff and moved it into the lab. And I only used the room for sleeping. And as a result, I burned myself out of the topic that I was working on. So when I got to Harvard, this elite place with world-class faculty, I got there and literally had no idea what I was going to do because I did not want to work on the same topic. So my confidence is a little bit shaken several times by doubt, competition from other students, hard classes, and at one point I considered putting my chemistry skills to good use by opening a brewery. Eventually I got it together. I defended my PhD thesis and earned a postdoctoral fellowship in chemical engineering at Stanford, which is sponsored by the CIA. And that sounds very cool and James Bond-esque. And at one point, and it sort of was, but not really, and here's why. When they gave us a tour of the CIA, the tour consisted of 3 rooms, the lobby, the museum, and the gift shop. And then we didn't see any backward shooting guns or exploding cars. So Stanford served as the launching point for my career as a professor. While I applied for positions at famous companies like IBM and Apple, anything I could think of, my current goals, while I applied for these positions, my real passion was for academic freedom. Sort of wanted the ability to work on whatever scientific or technological problem that really inspired me, like Star Trek. Like, I want to make Star Trek happen. That's my goal. I want that universe today, if possible. So my current goals are to make materials for solar panels that cost $1 per square foot, so really cheap stuff. Materials that are electronic materials that are indestructible. So picture opening up your computer, taking out a chip, and stretching it by a factor of 10. I want to make a material that can do that. If you can do that, you can solve the energy crisis. You can make wearable devices for electronic skin, biomedical monitoring, implantable devices. I have a new idea for a project which is based on telesurgery using augmented reality. So imagine there's one specialist who can do a surgery in the world, and he or she lives in Rochester. And you need to do a surgery on somebody in Singapore, 10,000 miles away. The vision is to have the doctor put on a virtual reality headset and a glove that has actuators in it that make the glove feel like you're actually working inside a patient. Meanwhile, there's a robot with sensors on the gloves that are mimicking the doctor's motions with micrometer accuracy. So that's not something that's going to happen tomorrow, but there's time. Okay, I've had a group of extraordinary students in my research group, so this is my 5th year as now tenured associate professor at UC San Diego. 3 of my former student trainees are at Stanford. One is a postdoc at MIT, and another one turned his PhD thesis into a company and has already raised $1 million in seed funding from angel investors and venture capital. I'd like to acknowledge several teachers that I've had at Village Elementary, Merton Williams, and the high school, including starting very early on, Marianne O'Brien, Kay Melvin. I was very active in the Model United Nations, so I'd like to thank Bob Phillips and Kim Saxton, Pat Beggy for being just a fantastically inspirational English teacher. So writing to a zeroth order approximation, I know that's an engineering term, but to a zeroth order approximation, I'm a writer. I write about my work. That's how it gets out into the world, and that's how it gets funded. Music, I've already mentioned Tim Stott and Nancy Russo, and also Dave Smalley, who was at Merton Williams, but was also my piano teacher growing up. Chuck Partridge, Steve Williams in social studies and math, John Farnham in social studies, and I want to thank especially my scientific mentors, Tom Dowd and the late great Darryl Dupre, whose REACH program was the closest thing to a PhD experience that I had experienced between the ages of 10 and 22. So REACH really prepared me in that way. I'd like to also thank finally my parents, Roz and Mars Lipomi, who gave me the love and encouragement to pursue my dreams, no matter how often my dreams changed. So thank you very much for your attention. Thanks.